lamb is tied and I must away. Don't you weep, lass, for I'll be back. When I return you can then rest easy, but for now there's no turning back. For I'll go raiding in the night, love, I'll ride loyally with my kin. The moon is up and I'm away, love, for there is vengeance and there is gain. I know it's hard when I have to leave, these deeds of ours have a bloody end, but for honour and my family I'd stay with you and the cattle tend.
Welcome to the much anticipated part 3 of the Border Reiver series. It's time we looked at the clans that lived on the border and made a name for themselves as the great riding families. In this video, we'll look at the English families. So, without further ado, let's dive in. The Armstrongs. While the Armstrongs were mostly Scottish, it's probable that they were of English origin, and there were a good deal of Armstrongs on the English side of the border too. Found across the region, the Armstrongs were the most feared riding family of the frontier, able to put 3,000 men into the saddle at a day's notice. They were stronger than the next two most powerful families combined. Notable family members include Johnny Armstrong and Kinmont Willie. The Bells. Again, a family with branches on both sides of the border. Said to be a great surname of the West March. It was believed that to hold this name signified that you had very good looks. The Bells were very active in raiding and conducting family feuds, primarily hostile against the fellow English Graham family. Notables include Willie Redcloak and Christopher Bell. It's still a very common name in the borders today. The Charltons. The Charltons were found in the area of Tynedale mostly. They were one of the hardest families to control and a great thorn in the side of the crown. They were famously engaged in a bitter feud with the Scots of Buccleuch and had on-off alliances with various Scottish families. Notable Reivers include Lionel of Thornborough and John of the Bower. The Fenix. A very powerful English family, described as gentlemen and often found among the border officials. They were involved in a great number of feuds with other families, including a very bitter one with the Scottish Elliots of Liddesdale. Notable members include William of Wallington and Richard Fenwick of Stanton. The Fenwicks are still very numerous today in northeast England. The Forsters. Living in the English east and western marches and very close to the border line, but found also across the English border. The Forsters were a very large family, but not particularly close. They had a close alliance with the Scottish Hume family. Notable members include Sir John Forster and Red Rowie. The Forsters are still found in great number across northern England today. The Grahams. The Graham family were mostly English, but were ready to fight against England as much as they were against Scotland. Apart from the Armstrongs, the Grahams were probably the most dangerous and notorious Reivan family. At the height, they had 13 towers and 500 riders, making them the biggest family in the West Border. They were brutally persecuted by King James VI, or First, when the border pacification came. Notable Reivers include Richie of Bracken Hill and Jock of the Pear Tree. Graham is a common name in Cumberland today still. The Halls. The Halls were a large and widely spread clan, and at one point the most powerful family in Redesdale. This family were feared and hated on both sides of the border, and often there was no quarter given to captured members of this family. There was much cross-border intermarrying among the Halls. Notable family members include Eddie Hall and George of Burdup. There's still a good number of Halls on both sides of the border today. The Hetheringtons. Found by the border line, and the English West March frontier. The Hetheringtons were Scandinavian in origin. They weren't massive raiders, but were frequently involved in blackmail, both receiving and paying. They were also deeply involved in the plot to kill the Bishop of Carlisle in 1569. Notables are Thomas the Merchant and George of Walden. The Muss Graves. These were a powerful Cumberland family with a long record of service to the English crown, both as soldiers and officials, but nevertheless, they still engaged in reiving activity, very likely using their position to cover up what they were doing. The Muss Graves were constantly warring with Scottish families, and held a 3-century vendetta against fellow Cumbrians, the Dacres. Notables include Thomas, Humphrey, and John Musgrave. The Robsons, a predominantly English family, but with a few Scots offshoots. The Robsons were mostly found around Tynedale. They were at one point the leading family of Tynedale, and were greatly troublesome. They formed a powerful bloc with the Charltons, the Dodds, and the Milburns. The Nixons. These were both Scottish and English, described as having many loose men. A very troublesome family, and an important player in the Armstrong-Elliot-Nixon-Crozier Confederacy. They were a smaller family than the Armstrongs, but held a fair bit of sway and authority over other families such as the Glendinnings and the Thompsons. Like other families based in Liddesdale, they occasionally allied with England against Scotland. Notable clansmen include fingerless Will Nixon and ill-drowned Geordie. The Potts, a small family group based in Redesdale, Northumberland. They were often caught up in the reiving activities of their neighbours. The Headleys, another Redesdale family. They were one of the dreaded upland reiver families. The Dodds. The Dodds were a clan from the valleys of Tynedale in Northumberland. Tynedale families usually only reived in Scotland, where they were particularly hated. The Milburns. The Milburns were a very active reiving family who lived in the upland valleys of Northumberland. They were noted for feuding with the Croziers of Liddesdale and with the Scott family, just to the north. They were strongly allied to the Charltons and to the Reeds. The Yarrows. The Yarrows were a small English clan who resided in the English Middle March, around Falstone. The Dacres, a North Cumberland family. These people held high official office in the area. They often feuded with the Musgrave clan, who also held high official position. The Selbys. The Selbys were a minor border family whose home base was in North Northumberland. They were frequently involved with deadly feuds with the Scottish Kerrs. The Greys, another North Northumbrian family whose members held high office. The Herons, a notable family based in North Northumberland again, and again often holding official posts. They were notable for being at a feud with the nearby Tates. The Ridleys, a Cumbrian family that held high position. The Storys. The Storys were a large clan, but that wasn't enough to stop them being forced out of the West by Lord Dacre in the 1520s for suspected treachery. Their land was then occupied by the Grahams. Despite this, they were heavily involved in raiding and feuding. Notable members are Jock of Ortonburn and Wat of the Hove End. While some of these families, such as the Nixons, the Robsons, and the Grahams, are perhaps the most notorious and well known, many of these names were also much lesser known in the border. There are, of course, also many smaller reiving families, which I'll name now. The Lowthers, the Jamiesons, the Hardens, the Routledges, the Nobles, the Carnabys, the Taylors, the Hodgsons, the Salkens, the Kerwins, the Thompsons, the Hunters, the Stockos, the Wilkinsons, the Stampers, the Stapletons, the Andersons, the Shaftos, the Collingwoods, the Medfords, the Carnabys, the Witheringtons or Woodringtons, the Duns, the Ogles, the Reivers and the Wakes. And with that we bring the video to a close. But join me for part 4 when I'll talk about the Scottish reiving families. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and a share. And do comment below as well if you're a descendant of the Reivers and tell me what family. Until next time.